Okay, good morning everybody and welcome to the Nottinghamshire Economic Prosperity Committee. Welcome everybody. We have no apologies received according to my notes, but has anyone sent them in at the last minute? Okay, I think perhaps if we just go round and introduce members and officers from each of the authorities so we can say who's on the call. So if we start with Nottinghamshire. Kay, would you like to start?
Good morning, I'm Kay Cutts. I'm leader of Nottinghamshire County Council.
Anthony?
I'm Anthony May. I'm the Chief Executive of the County Council. Good morning, everyone.
Anybody else here from the county?
No, Chairman.
Okay, let's go with Broxtowe then.
Councillor Milan Radulovic, leader Broxtowe Borough Council.
And Ruth Hyde, Chief Executive, Broxtowe Borough Council.
Richard Robinson, independent member, Broxtowe Borough Council.
Okay, thank you. Welcome. Bassett Law.
Jo White, Deputy Leader of Bassett Law District Council.
Morning, everybody. I'm Neil Taylor, Chief Exec from Bassett Law.
Good morning. Mansfield.
Yeah, Andy Abrahams, Executive Mayor, Mansfield. The minutes have got me down as councillor, but it's Executive Mayor, Mansfield.
Okay.
Hayley Barsby, Chief Exec at Mansfield.
Nothing.
Good morning. Ashfield.
Carol Cooper-Smith, Chief Executive of Ashfield. Jason was just finishing off a meeting and he's...
Morning all.
We'll move the screen so it's a bit more user-friendly. Oops. Good morning.
Good morning. Newark and Sherwood.
Good morning, John Robinson, Chief Executive, Newark and Sherwood. David Lloyd will be joining us in a few minutes.
Good morning. Gedling.
Morning, Mike Hill, Chief Executive of Gedling, and just for the apologies, I've just realised John Clark will not be joining us today, so thank you.
Rushcliffe.
Good morning, Chairman. Simon Robinson, leader of Rushcliffe Borough Council.
Good morning, Kath Marriott, Chief Executive, Rushcliffe Borough Council.
Good morning, and I'm David Mellon. I'm the leader of Nottingham City Council, chair at the moment. And Chris, you want to introduce yourself?
Chris Henning, I'm Corporate Director, Development Growth at the City Council.
Okay, and those supporting us this morning, Kath and Emma, do you want to introduce yourselves?
Good morning, I'm Castian Pryor, I'm Governance Officer taking the minutes.
And I'm Emma and I'm supporting the streaming.
And have I left anybody out? I'm sorry if I have. Please shout now.
Yes, it's Peter Davies Bride, Economic Development, Nottingham City Council.
Morning, Peter.
Morning.
That was about going back to the classroom. That was calling the register. But anyway, welcome everybody. Hope we have a good morning together. The appointment of Vice Chair. I understand that under the terms of reference and agreed procedure, the position of Vice Chair rotates alphabetically. And so the Vice Chair is currently held by Bassett Law and it should be passed to Broxtowe. So our Broxtowe colleagues, do you want to nominate someone for that role?
Chair, I will nominate Councillor Milan Radulovic. Thank you.
Can we all agree to that?
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, any declarations of interest? No? So we'll go on to the minutes of the EPC held on the 6th of March. What a different world we're in on the 6th of March.
Chair, I have an amendment to make with regard to the minutes in that Councillor Simon Greaves shouldn't be listed and the Vice Chair should be listed as Jo White. And also the amendments with regard to Andy Abrahams, an Executive Mayor.
Okay, are there any other amendments to make to those minutes, or anybody uncertain or unhappy with anything? I remember it was a lovely sunny morning, and I took the train to work, so it was a really nice day. Little did we know what was coming. Anyway, thanks very much for that. And let's move on to the economic recovery plans. I think, Anthony, you're going to first of all present the Nottinghamshire COVID-19 Crisis Economic Recovery Action Plan, and then it will be followed by Chris Henning, who will report on the city's economic renewal plan. So, Anthony first.
Thank you, Chair. I've just emailed the presentation to Peter and Emma, because when I try and share the screen as a participant, it says the sharing facility has been disabled by the host. So if either Emma or Peter are able to share the screen, it's easier for people to see the presentation. If that's not possible, Chair, then I'll take people through it without showing the slides. So either Emma or Peter able to share the slides? I've just emailed them.
I'm not Anthony, I'm afraid, but I've asked Emma if Emma, you'd be able to, please.
They came up momentarily, Emma, and now they've disappeared. We've got your, looks like your inbox or your front screen.
Okay.
They did flash up just for a second. Doesn't look like we're being successful here, Emma. You got any luck? Chair, while Emma wrestles with the technology, I'll make a start. Otherwise, okay, we're going to keep people waiting. So the County Council published its Economic Recovery Action Plan a couple of weeks ago. A few months ago, the County Council commissioned a new committee. It's our Resilience, Recovery and Renewal Committee. It's a committee of the council where all matters related to COVID are discussed. And at the last meeting, we approved an action plan for economic recovery. And the plan itself is built on the council's council plan, which we published in 2017. And the four aims of the council plan are to help people bring up their families, fulfill their ambitions, enjoy their later lives and start and grow businesses. And our economic recovery plan builds on that with the obvious addition of a response to the COVID-19 outbreak. What we've done in the plan is we've looked at the national economic headwind and woven that into a local response. And people will know, of course, that what COVID-19 has done for consumer spending, particularly in the high street and in our shopping centres, is that it's slowed it down. There's been some compensatory effect with online shopping, but in the places where we want to see people and their families, footfall is definitely declining, especially across town centres, retail parks and shopping centres. And the government, we know, have responded to that with job support schemes, self-employment income support schemes, and with over 1 million businesses with flexibilities to help them pay back loans to the government. But at the same time, we do know that local action will be necessary, particularly across a county as large as Nottinghamshire, working with our partners to ensure that our local response complements that that's been offered by government. And in the local area, 115,000 people have been supported by the Job Retention Scheme, 27,000 individuals supported by the Self-Employment Income Support Scheme, £139 million worth of grants been paid out by our partners in the district and borough councils around grant funding for small and medium-sized businesses, and 455 different businesses supported by the business interruption loans. £93,000 gone out to small business grants. Over £1 million has gone out in local authority discretionary funding, and a variety of other funds that have been administered locally in a partnership between the county council and our district and borough council. So we've done what we can, and I have to say that colleagues across the county have worked extremely well together to get this money to businesses in double quick time. And we know from our conversations with businesses, and I'm sure it's the same in the city area, that these funding streams have been a real lifeline for businesses and for individuals who are self-employed. But of course, we know that they can't last forever, and things like the job retention scheme will change in the coming weeks. So locally, we've also been thinking about the things that we can do to supplement what's already been done by the government. We've looked at our action plan and split it down into a number of different headings. In terms of supporting people, for example, we've got some job creation programs underway, and we've got some workforce development programs underway across Nottinghamshire. These are aimed at protecting individuals so that we avoid people having drops in their income, and we avoid large-scale unemployment across the county. We're working with our partners on those, and of course, Chair, you'll be familiar with the company that we own jointly between the city and the county called Futures. We're using Futures particularly in support to under 25s and lots of different programs where Futures will be investing over £4 million annually in young people under 25, whether it's independent advice or other programs of work. And Futures, of course, also run the National Careers Service. We're also using the other companies that the council owns to protect jobs, to generate income, and also to encourage new people into the workforce, particularly those that might be long-term unemployed. In truth, we've had a programme of activity underway in the council for those employment groups for some time, but COVID-19 has enabled us to accelerate that and really move forward with our employment and skills programmes. Again, working with our partners nationally, whether that's the DWP or our district and borough council partners or the local enterprise partnership. And there's a particular focus on working with SMEs and jointly with our universities. In terms of supporting businesses, between now and March 2021, we're developing our approach to support inward investment and supporting particularly SMEs. We're providing business support and mentoring, helping with access to finance, working to see if we can support the resilience of supply chains, helping businesses and individuals, self-employed people with property searches, and we're providing underpinning evidence and data. We're also drawing very heavily on the Midlands Engine Economic Observatory. Many colleagues will have seen the monitor that's been published by the Observatory month on month since the beginning of the pandemic, and that's been very helpful to us in understanding what's happening to businesses across our patch. And as we move forward with recovery, of course, we're working with Chris Henning, who's chairing the Local Resilience Forum Recovery Group, and that's doing some really good work, making sure that what we're doing in terms of recovery for people and businesses in the county is in sync with what's happening in the city. We're also looking to maximise our low carbon opportunities. Colleagues may know that we've got some of our own developments underway, whether that's at Top Weekhay, or whether that's at Lyndhurst on the outskirts of Mansfield, or the work that we're doing in conjunction with Broxtowe Borough Council and many other colleagues at the site of the new hub station in Towton. All of those sites we hope to use to maximise low carbon opportunities and also expand many of those opportunities and much of that learning into the Development Corporation, which I'm going to talk about later on the agenda, Chair. In terms of what we're doing to promote Nottinghamshire as a place, so either as much as we can during the pandemic, when there are obvious restrictions on people travelling and having their holidays and making visits to places in the way that they normally would, and beyond COVID-19, to ensure that Nottinghamshire is still a great place for people to spend their money and their time. We're relooking at our marketing strategy, looking at making sure that we promote the existing brands of Nottinghamshire, like Pilgrim Fathers and Robin Hood, and many of the other things that Nottinghamshire is well known for, and ensuring that we're working with colleagues so that our heritage sites like Rufford and Sherwood and many of the other sites that people know and love are first of all open during COVID-19, and secondly, that we've got a plan to ensure that they remain viable and are accessible for people from within Nottinghamshire and from outside of Nottinghamshire as we move in to the recovery phase and beyond. And we're paying particular attention to digital development. Our broadband coverage now on 5G is 98.22% across the county. It's one of the highest in the country. And our new gigabyte coverage is up at 14%. And many colleagues will know that we've got particular projects on 5G demonstrator sites at places like Sherwood Forest. Also, in terms of our infrastructure, we're working extremely hard to ensure that we still have a programme of investment in infrastructure, whether that's the Development Corporation, HS2, working with Midlands Connect, our road improvement programme, which has seen us lever in investment for many new initiatives up and down the county, and we're working extra hard to exploit any opportunities that come through government. For example, as part of the Midlands Engine Development Corporation, we've submitted a bid to the government's comprehensive spending review, but depending on how that turns out, for infrastructure funding to support the Development Corporation, and particularly to support the sites around the new hub station, which many colleagues who are involved in HS2 will know need significant investments if we're going to maximise those opportunities. And then nearly coming to the end, Chair, in terms of working with our partners to ensure that our place-based initiatives are as resilient and effective as they can be. We've been working with our district and borough councils as we work in collaboration to ensure that our town centres are as resilient as they can be, and to look at where we've got other opportunities, such as the decommissioning of power stations, because colleagues will know it's not only the power station at Ratcliffe-on-Soar that will be decommissioned in the coming years. There are other power stations in the north of the county where we're working with partners to come up with viable solutions for the future, which pay particular attention to our carbon footprint. And lastly, Chair, we're also working on a range of innovative travel solutions, particularly to improve short trips and work on the notion of 20-minute neighbourhoods. And we're integrating all of those travel solutions and that 20-minute neighbourhood concept into the initiatives that the County Council is developing itself. The ones I mentioned earlier, such as Lyndhurst, which is on the outskirts of Mansfield, Topwig Hay, and the hub station site at Toton. And then moving to the conclusion, Chair, we've got a programme in place to ensure that all of our delivery plans for the 11 actions in the plan that we published a couple of weeks ago are up and running over the next few months, and that they will be continually reviewed in public by our recovery, our resilience recovery and renewal committee, which is a public committee of the County Council. So I hope that gives you a whistle-stop tour of the way that we're trying to promote recovery across Nottinghamshire, working within the County Council and with our partnership, with our partners, Chair. And as always, I'm very happy to take questions.
Thank you, Anthony. Kate, do you want to add anything to that?
No, I think, David, that Anthony's covered all the bases that I would cover. But of course, I'm happy to help answer questions if there's something that Anthony thinks would be more in my purview. Thank you.
Okay, so I'll open the floor now for questions and comments. If you want to just indicate by raising your hand virtually, that would be helpful. If not, just wave at me and I'll try and bring you in. Milan, do you want to come in?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. One of the things that's raised its ugly head during the last few months in particular is the amount of business fraud. There was quite an item last night on the news, I don't know if you saw it, relating to business grant fraud. And I wondered what resilience and that if that had been looked at, Anthony, particularly through trading standards for the amount of business loans that appear to be applied for and under other people's names without their knowledge. That was essentially the basis of the fraud. So you can just give us a quick update to ensure that that's being looked at particularly from a trading standards point of view.
Thank you, Milan. Thank you, Chair. So trading standards have done an awful lot of work during the pandemic on fraud and scam busting, Milan. I would need to check with them what specific work they've done in relation to the issue that you've raised, but I know they're aware of it. I saw the report myself on the news. I will double check with them, and I'll drop you a note as to the specific actions they're taking to try and minimise fraud on these business loans. I'll very happily come back to you on that.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Chris?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, Anthony, I was very interested to hear about the concept of the 20-minute town or 20-minute city, which you introduced at the end of your presentation there, and it's certainly something which is gathering pace in across the world, the US, Europe, and most recently, I think in Paris. It's also something we're thinking about in the city as well. It would be really helpful to understand if you could expand on that a bit, because I think it's probably a concept whose time has come given the challenges of COVID.
Thank you, Chris, and Chair. Very happy to come back on that. So we're focusing particularly, Chris, on the developments that the County Council is promoting or managing, either on its own or in partnership. So especially interested in this around a hub station at Towton on the Garden Village concept, particularly interested in the development at Lyndhurst on the edge of Mansfield, where there's a lot of opportunities for micro transport, transport on demand, making sure that facilities are within walking distance, planning in walking and cycling routes, particular focus on that at Top Wighay. Councillor Cutts might want to mention something about Top Wighay because she's had a particular hand in that. But wherever we've got an influence on the design and the infrastructure that enables people to live, shop, work, go to school locally without increasing our carbon footprint, we're trying to take every opportunity in doing that. In the Development Corporation, Chris, you know from the conversations that you and I have had, we're working particularly hard with our universities to bring forward innovation around access and accessibility, and the spaces between the sites in the Development Corporation. We're looking hard at those to make sure that we can connect them up in a way which promotes local transport, more accessible opportunities, particularly employment opportunities, without people having to rely on traditional forms of transport, and also looking to exploit the green and blue architecture and infrastructure that we've got between those sites. I'm sure that Councillor Cutts would like to add something here, Chair, on what we're doing at Top Wighay in particular.
Okay.
Thank you. I don't have a hand, unfortunately, so I had to raise my physical hand.
That's okay.
Just to expand on things Anthony has said, at Top Wighay, we had an opportunity there to bring forward a piece of land for development for new housing. We've taken the opportunity whilst we're doing that to think very carefully about how it's going to work and how people are going to drive around it. And we've come up with the concept of a new village, Top Wighay Village, and it has at its heart what we call the Sacred Centre. That's my words for it. The Sacred Heart of the whole village is where we have the school, where we have the local shop and probably the medical centre, and then the village hall and allotments and green spaces around that. And either side of that, there will be plots of quite a number of new houses, over 805 altogether. And the idea is that people can actually walk to school, children can walk to school, can walk to the shop, can walk to the medical centre by green routes or cycle there. We are discouraging cars for driving through the estate by building in from day one traffic calming round the school, so there is no problem of the usual thing where cars go scooting around schools and then we have to introduce them afterwards. This will be built into the first system. We've also made the school so it's the first access point on the site, so parents from outside Topwick Hay Village might be coming in, say, from Hucknall or Papelwick close by, will be able to park in the school, turn around and go out again without going through the whole estate, but also perhaps shopping in the local shop as well. So there'll be some business generated by that. And by building these things in, we believe we're cutting down the carbon footprint considerably. We've also taken the opportunity, if you're the government's ambition to reduce gas boilers by 2025, of not having gas on the site at all, but making sure superfast broadband is there. And so again, we're looking to the future to make this carbon neutral and to fit in line with the ambitions of everybody. We're hoping by making it this 20-minute village, that's going to give people a chance to live somewhere that's a pleasant place to live, to know your neighbours. Your children can go and play safely on the playing fields. Teams can come and play without clogging up the whole of the streets as happens at the moment on the site. And of course, allotment gardens as well. We've also applied that concept to Towton in conjunction with our colleagues there. And the Towton village that we're looking at is enhancing the green and blue infrastructure. I think it's really important that people do have access to the countryside. I think it's really important we do clean up those areas which are now derelict. A lot of land at Towton is sidings, and that will become housing. We'll also have access to Attenborough Nature Reserve by the way of a walk or cycle route. And again, children will be able to go to school quite safely in the area. But it's also the live at home scheme as well, a live and work at home. By having the innovation campus there, I think there's an opportunity for people to move there, to go to work on foot, even go home for lunchtime maybe, as we're all enjoying at the moment. And again, in a safe environment for everyone, which reduces the need for the carbon footprint. And we can't eradicate this altogether. We thought very carefully about the concept here. And I know I've been talking to my colleagues in Broxtowe, particularly Milan, about this matter over the last couple of weeks, where this is our vision for the future, if you like, how people can actually live and work together. And actually, I suppose it's a nod over our shoulders to the past, because of course that's exactly how villages came about. And it's, if you like, bringing that concept of community back again, but also connection. Because Towton, of course, will have the high-speed railway link there eventually, and that will be connected to everywhere across the country, and then, of course, to the world as well, because of their airport. So we think this is all the best of both worlds: modern travel, but also the pleasure, if you like, of living in an environment which is free of traffic and having access to nature more readily and knowing your neighbours. So we think it's a concept that's really worth repeating, Chairman, and thank you for the opportunity to tell you about it.
Thank you. Simon.
Yeah, Chairman, just two questions really for Karen Anthony. One is, have you intelligence when the furlough scheme ends in October? What will that do in terms of the county economy across SMEs particular? And secondly, Brexit as well. Is this reflected also in the resilience plan? I know it's an agenda item later, but I think that's under environment, isn't it? So I just wonder whether you'd reflect that in your business resilience. Or
no,
maybe
we've taken account very much. If I may, Anthony, I'm sorry, I'd rather jumped in there, David. We've taken account of where people are going to be after the furlough scheme, and that's why we brought forward the gigabyte programme that we have. We've also got the gigabyte vouchers, which unfortunately we didn't get any funding for from the D2N2. That's helped, I can't remember the exact number, something like 86 SMEs already, whereby they can draw down this voucher to get the broadband speeds they need. If you're running a business from home, the last thing you want is a poor connection to broadband. You need quick download speeds. You need to be able to use things that we're using today to talk to people, especially during the present time. And by running that out across the country, that's really been very important to us. For Brexit, well, a lot of our businesses are small businesses, and those small businesses, of course, are relying upon the county council to provide the infrastructure, which is the broadband infrastructure, but also the hard infrastructure as well. And that's why we're trying to draw down funding from government for expanding the, say, like 614 junctions, where we want to have junctions improvement all the way along the 614. New housing will be at the Ollerton roundabout, and that's predicated upon getting the 614 junctions so people can move about more freely. And that again, of course, means improvements between the A1 and the M1, the A46 and the A52. It's a spine through our county that's very important. And I know it's very much supported by the villages along there. So we're hoping to build in the resilience by improving the infrastructure. I've also been speaking to my colleagues in the Midlands Connect, and particularly the A1. We are pressing government now, not just for road safety alterations on the A1, which are very necessary. There have been some very poor accidents along there, very serious accidents, but also by getting into three-way motorway standard, because we've had very little investment in Nottinghamshire for about the last 40 years. And now is the time we need the infrastructure upgrading in order to reflect the new economy where goods and services need to go by rail. Also, people need to travel about by cars and other transport, but also take the opportunities to work from home as well. And those conduits between them give people a chance to live and work from home, but also get your goods and services to where you need to be. Because of course, if you're a plumber or an electrician, you can't do your work from home, you actually have to go somewhere. And it's really important we sort of iron out traffic jams wherever we possibly can. So that's just a flavour of the some of the things that we're being doing. It's actually reflected on page 7 and 8 of our strengths and opportunities of our book that was referred to earlier, our recovery action plan, which has been circulated to all my colleagues in the County Council. I'm sure anyone else would like a copy, we can allow you to have one. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Kate.
Thank you. Anything to add, Anthony, on that?
Only that working with the Midlands Engine Economic Observatory gives us really good data on the impact of any shock to the economy, Councillor Robinson, and I think we know as much as we know in terms of the ending of the furlough scheme. There will be another monitor due any time now, I think. So perhaps what I could do, Chair, is circulate that to members of the EPC so that you can see not only the impact locally, but also the impact across the region. I think it's too early to say in respect of Brexit, Simon, although it's starting to get and look a little bit more urgent perhaps than it was in the early months of the pandemic. But again, hopefully the monitor would show us some detail about what businesses are thinking and what business sentiment looks like in respect of both COVID-19, the ending of the furlough scheme, and the prospect of Brexit, however that ends up.
Yeah, thank you very much, Anthony.
Just a question for myself then, Anthony. How much is your plan proofed for what we don't know will happen, what will happen in terms of a second spike, which we seem to be in, and the consequence for the economy? Clearly, we've worked hard across the whole of the city and county area to maintain levels of infections which are not as high as other parts of the country. But I'm quite concerned at what we're seeing with students in other parts of the country, and some indication in Nottingham. I'm sure maybe those of you who have students living in your areas will maybe be affected by this, that this could be a challenge to us in terms of infection control, and thus a challenge to our economic plans.
Thank you, Chair. So I suppose the answer I would give is we've done our best in constantly changing circumstances to future-proof the plan. I have to say one of our great strengths in Nottinghamshire throughout this has been the Local Resilience Forum, and great credit to all colleagues who have worked so hard to make it the case that in Nottinghamshire we have got lower infection rates overall than many other parts of the country. I don't think that's by accident. I think it's because we've worked extremely hard to ensure that we've done as much around infection control, as much around communications and messaging as possible. I would like to pay tribute to both Directors of Public Health for the work that they've done to get messages into the community, and the respective local outbreak engagement boards, because I think now that we've got political leadership in this arena, it's certainly helping. We saw some examples recently of a very heavy fine to deter people holding parties in their houses, and we saw an example last week of a public house being closed. Now, I think all of these things combined, preparation, communication, keeping on top of the data, help us be resilient for the future. But you're right, there are some things that will happen in our communities, whether it's the return of students to universities or any other potential issue that will cause us a problem with COVID-19 that we must take into account. As far as the universities are concerned, I think we've worked extremely hard and very well with both the university vice-chancellors. I've spent a lot of time with Shearer and Edward to try and ensure that their return to university is carefully managed and resilient. But young people, when they're away at university, expect to behave and have experiences of a certain type. And we must do all we can, of course, to make sure that they can come back to Nottingham and Nottinghamshire safely, get a good education, but also have a good experience of Nottingham and Nottinghamshire, which hopefully they'll carry through the rest of their lives. I think the early weeks of return to university will be particularly challenging for all of us. I think we must keep open communication channels with the vice-chancellors and with the universities and make sure that our directors of public health are giving them up-to-date data and advice. And if they need additional support, like mobile testing facilities or anything else that would help them keep the students and the wider community safe, we've got to try and provide it for them. So I think we're doing as much as we can, Chair, in a constantly changing situation. But I know people are working extremely hard every single day, often long days and weekends, to ensure that we try and keep the infection rates low, both in the city and across the county.
Thanks, Anthony. I have nobody else who's indicated they want to say anything at this stage.
Chair,
David?
I think Mayor Abrahams might.
Yes, sorry.
Yeah, in this sort of the post-COVID economic climate, is there still confidence that HS2 will actually go ahead? The costings of it were called into question and being challenged before COVID. And obviously a lot of this strategic recovery plan is kind of based around the assumption that it does go ahead. And is there a plan B if it doesn't?
Thank you. I'm happy to start on that. And I think that Councillor Cutts will want to say something because Kay chairs the HS2 strategy group. So our basic assumption throughout this, whether it was the pre-COVID speculation about the future of HS2 under this new Conservative government, or post-COVID speculation about HS2 because of the state of the nation's finance, has been that HS2 will go ahead. And all the enabling legislation and the preparatory work that the government has done, or that HS2 Limited has done, gives us cause for optimism that that's the case. The messages coming out of government, even through the pandemic, have been positive and optimistic. You can never say never. The government could change its mind, of course. It's got plenty of opportunity to do that because the hybrid bill and legislation that is necessary to bring HS2 to pass in Nottinghamshire will be a long and winding road. But at the moment, the government has spurned plenty of opportunities to do a U-turn and stop it happening. So we're working on the basis at the moment that it will. But of course, we've got options if it doesn't. For example, and I'm sure that Councillor Radulovic and Ruth Hyde would say the same, the area around the hub station at Towton is still a very marketable and very investable area on the edge of the city, well located with or without HS2. Clearly, if HS2 comes, it brings an enormous opportunity that we want to exploit. And we are working on the basis that it will. But if it doesn't, in the true Nottinghamshire style, I'm sure we'll swing into action and make sure that we've got alternative plans. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, and then we'll move on.
Yes, the HS2 line is a line which is, if you like, also dependent upon the East Coast line as well. It's what I call a missing piece of railway line. It will really benefit the cities of Nottingham and Derby in particular, and Leicester to a lesser degree, by putting in the extra rail link that we need, because of course it goes through to Chesterfield and then out towards Leeds. And Leeds is a very large area, about 700,000, 800,000 population, where it's not connected to Nottinghamshire in any meaningful way. The East Coast line is a very useful line, for anyone who's living along that. It's just the missing piece in the middle. It's really important. And I think that is a standalone line in many ways. But of course, we're not talking about next week. We're talking about something like 2030, or perhaps bringing it forward to 2028. As Anthony has said, we've had every opportunity for the government to pull the plug on this. And we have always made our case out and think it's been a good case. And I thank my colleagues and partners for this, because the board I chair is strongly behind this, showing the line as being that area which we've all come behind. There's a public exhibition to be held shortly, which will show the green and blue infrastructure, that's the nature part of it, and also where the line goes. And it's a virtual exhibition. So again, all the skills we've learned over the past 6 months are going to come into action here, where people can go on and see exactly what the line means. It is also about housing as well. There's a large number of housing units there that we need. It's not so close to the city, it's actually 7 miles away, but it's well embedded within Nottinghamshire. And of course, it's right on the borders of Derbyshire, with Long Eaton the other side. And Long Eaton, as everybody knows, has ever bought any piece of soft furniture, is mostly made in Long Eaton, it's made in this country. So it's a very important part of the construction of the country. And, you know, we're all bound together in this programme. HS2 is not about what happens in Nottinghamshire, about what happens along the rest of the line. So I'm fairly confident it's going to go ahead. And I don't think it will be delayed, because again, it is a very long lead in time. And by that time, I'm hoping the virus is well behind us. Thank you, Chairman.
I would just add to that. I think there is agreement of the benefit it's going to have to our area, but to other areas as well. You know, the leaders of Leeds and Sheffield are very much in favour of this, as the leader of Chesterfield. And I think we need to get to a stage with our leg of it that it becomes too difficult to cancel it, that they need to get on with it, whether it's this government or the one in the future. If we can bring it forward, as Kay said, that's all to the better, because it will be not only a response to the underinvestment in the East Midlands, but also help us in these difficult times ahead economically. Let's move on to the City Economic Renewal Plan. I'll ask Chris Henning to present that, please.
Thank you, Chair. And can I ask Emma to put my slides on the screen, please? Just in advance of that, what I'm sharing with you today is a summary of a draft report, which will be presented to the City Council's Executive Board at the end of October. So this is very much a draft report and the headlines from that. It's a recovery plan which has been developed in coordination with two organisations in the city. First of all, Nottingham Growth Board, which brings together our businesses, universities and other major institutions, and then One Nottingham, which is very much our kind of community-led and engagement partnership. So the summary that you see before you has been developed jointly with those two organisations. Before I talk about the challenges, I just wanted to kind of reflect back to where we were in February, March of this year. And it very much felt like the city's time had come. We were seeing £2 billion worth of investment opportunities in the city centre alone, the transformation of the south side of the city, which finally properly connected the entry to our city to the city centre, and also historically low rates of unemployment. And things were very much looking positive for the city's economy. Of course, then COVID struck. We have been dealing, as Anthony has set out, with the variety of responses to the economic challenges around business grants, loan schemes, advice, and more latterly reopening the city centre, first to businesses and to workers, more recently preparing for the re-entry of students. So dealing with the immediate challenges has been a focus for the City Council, as much as it has for you out in district and county. we are facing a number of longer term challenges now. The early analysis suggests that unemployment could rise to as much as 17% by the end of 2020, which is actually the highest within D2N2. We know that there was a phrase at the beginning of COVID that COVID affects everyone equally. Well, in economic terms, it doesn't. It impacts more on low paid, low skilled employment and on young people. And it also has a real impact on some sectors, as we know, retail, hospitality businesses, and the potential to disrupt regeneration and investment plans. But it's not all bleak. There are opportunities there from the way we've seen the economy adapt and businesses adapt, the opportunity to harness digital technology, the resurgence of neighbourhood living, and the opportunities around sustainable living are all things that we need to kind of build on in planning for the future. Next slide, please. One of the important things for us is building on the base we have, and the importance of partnership in doing that. At the beginning of the recovery, the City Council set up our Nottingham Economic Recovery Unit, which brigaded our economic development and related services under one brand, enabled us to work more effectively together, and this continues to drive the City Council response. We work with a number of delivery organisations across the city. You see those there. Particularly important, I'll come back to, is Nottingham Jobs, which will support the work we do to address unemployment. In terms of our wider partnerships, I've mentioned the Growth Board and One Nottingham. Clearly, we, like county colleagues, are part of the Universities for Nottingham Partnership, D2N2 LEP and the Midlands Engine, all of which work at different levels of our economy and will be critical bodies in terms of supporting our renewal, the renewal of our economy. Next slide, please. The work that we've done with the Growth Board and One Nottingham has focused on a vision to build a creative, green and digital future. It's absolutely critical that we have a clear vision. We're able to reimagine the city and reshape our economy. We don't yet know how the city will bounce back, how the national or global economy will bounce back, but it is important that we consider the scenarios in which we are living and working, and recognise that at the very least what COVID will have done is accelerate some of the trends that we've seen previously. So it is critical for us to have the vision that beyond COVID, things can be built back better, understanding the context in which we'll be working. So the three parts of that vision are on the screen in front of you. The importance of a city of culture, creativity and innovation. The UK's first carbon neutral city. We are ahead of the game in our ambition to be carbon neutral by 2028. But critically, it's a city which offers opportunities for everyone. It's not about an over-focus on the city centre. It's about creating a city economy which can draw people in wherever they live in the city and beyond. Next slide, please. In order to focus our activities, we prioritised 6 themes, which you can see in front of you there, from the City of Creativity and Culture to reimagining the physical city, carbon neutral city, digital enterprise, entrepreneurship and innovation, and skills and employment. And underneath each of those sits a strategy, an approach and a plan. And altogether, there are a set of projects and a set of asks we will have of funding bodies, which total something like £500 million, and this will this investment, which we are kind of drawing up, will support the return of jobs, will develop commercial floor space and new housing, create learning opportunities, and reduce our carbon emissions and our carbon footprint. And it's important that we think in terms of a deal. We remember back to 2012 when the city was recovering from the financial crash. And at that time, the government put in place a city deal across the country with the core cities initially in order to help local areas build back. There's slightly different policy imperatives now with government, but what we've seen in cities around the country and with combined authorities as well are the plans which are put forward in terms of the language of deals. If we get investment, what is it that we will do in return? So we've developed those plans across each of these themes, and I'll talk very briefly about each of them. Next slide, please. So, City of Creativity and Culture, we are a UNESCO City of Literature. We have the Creative Quarter. A lot of our economy is built on the cultural and creative industries in the city centre. And it is going to be a critical way in which we bring people back into the city centre when it is safe to do so, in a world in which the retail economy is no longer as strong as it was. So creating new reasons to bring people back into the city centre. Our Strategic Cultural Board has set up something called the Nottingham Project, which will soon publish its findings of a 10-year programme to reinvigorate the creative economy, including things like a 2021 Festival of Creativity based on the Nottingham Castle refurbishment as a catalyst, and creating a new story for Nottingham and marketing the city around that narrative. So the importance of creating reasons for people to come back into the city, to enjoy the city again, and to see it in a new way. Next, please. It's going to be really important that we reimagine the city in physical terms, creating places for people that people want to be, they want to live, they want to work, they want to play, and they want to stay. Now, clearly, the need to transform Broadmarsh as part of the new South Side has received a new imperative. Everyone will be aware that the development on the Broadmarsh site is no longer the City Council, is the owner of the Broadmarsh site, and we will be bringing forward proposals to ensure that that's at the centrepiece of the new city centre. It's a really interesting time we have. In one sense, it's a huge challenge for us to have the Broadmarsh as a failed shopping centre quite at this time. However, the world is watching us, because there are going to be any number of kind of retail places where they are no longer as strong as they were, where they fail, and Nottingham is going to be the first city of a major size to be able to build back out of that. So there is the eyes of the development world is on us. In addition to that, we are working hard to make sure we're unlocking stalled sites right across the city, not just the city centre, from sites up in the north of the city in Blenheim to the Island Quarter just outside to the east of the city centre. Next slide, please. Carbon neutrality is a cornerstone of what the City Council stands for. Our commitment to reach carbon neutrality by 2028 is critical. It's a global problem, but with many local solutions. And the types of projects that proposals that we are pursuing in order to change that will be things like Council House retrofit programme, building on the very innovative work that we've done with Nottingham City Homes, and also looking very hard at the way we travel around the city. We are developing our green transport corridor as part of a European kind of blue-green infrastructure project, ensuring that we see a step change in active travel, understanding the corridors within the city, but also through the city, connecting the city itself to the way people travel around it, whether that be on foot or by bike or by other forms. Next slide, please. Digital enterprise is critical. We've seen how people have adapted to working from home. and the importance of our digital infrastructure and how we use it has become ever more present. We have a great base in terms of our financial technologies, and we will look to build on that together with our universities, which have centres of expertise in large part to develop our digital enterprise. Anthony talked about the broadband infrastructure. We have an increasingly competitive infrastructure moving us towards full fibre right across the city. Not only the incumbents of BT and Virgin investing, but also City Fibre and ITS, which should drive down the prices and increase the capacity. On that infrastructure, we will look to build the strength of our digital sectors, working particularly with the University of Nottingham to create a digital incubator and hub within the city centre, which can provide a real beacon for activity from teaching through to research, through to spin-outs, innovation and business growth in much the same way that BioCity has done for the life sciences. Next slide, please. Just a couple more left, looking at entrepreneurship and innovation. What we learned really strongly from the recovery from the financial crash in 2012 was the need to build an innovation and growth ecosystem, which meant that initial intervention from the public sector was then taken up and amplified through the private sector. And critical to that is the availability of finance and the availability of growth support. Government, through the COVID period, has put into place funds, loan funds and grant funds, and it's vital that building out of the current challenges, that businesses, that potentially successful businesses do have access to those funds to grow in a way that doesn't simply prevent the growth of the economy, because lending is now more difficult. So we have a good base in terms of our universities, in terms of our sector hubs. We've talked about digital, we've talked about life science, but there are many other kind of sectors which work well within Nottingham's economy, and it's important they have access to the funding support, and we will ensure that happens. Next slide, please. And last but certainly not least, is the need to rebuild the skills of our population and employment, which results. We saw the potential sharp rise in unemployment, which has the potential to occur once furloughing schemes end. We've heard about national schemes. I think the latest today was around supporting retraining and reskilling opportunities. But we have the local infrastructure which will enable us to do that, not only through Nottingham Jobs, the partnership we have with City Council Futures and Job Centre Plus, but also the development of Nottingham College, in particular their skills hub, their city hub, right in the city centre, which will form the basis of a lot of their new teaching. So it's going to be absolutely critical to engage with our young people and people who need to reskill. We've done this through the period of COVID. One of the most important things we did was help people who are being laid off in the retail and hospitality industries, and we've been helping them to retrain for the social care sector, where clearly there have been more people required. So there are things we can do, but nevertheless we don't underestimate the size of the challenge. Next slide, please. So where will this plan go? As I said, you've seen a kind of an early version of this. We will look to get the full plan adopted by the City Council and to get that published. We'll work with partners that I've set out to shape the delivery, work with government and our local enterprise partnership to secure funding for the specific projects, and then use this to drive economic renewal citywide, both within the city centre, but making sure that the benefits of this extend to neighbourhoods. This is a challenge we face, but with the right plans and with the right ambition in place, it's a challenge that we want to be ready for. Thank you. You're on mute, Councillor.
Sorry. Thank you for that, Chris. Anybody want to ask a question or to make a comment on Chris's presentation? Can't see anybody wanting to. I mean, perhaps if I can add then that, you know, all of us face a challenge, and I guess my question to Anthony earlier was about, we are in changing times, but people need to have a vision to get behind and to see that there is a way through for us. And I think we in Nottingham have plenty of challenges, but we also have plenty of opportunities as well. And I think it's about getting hold of those. But given that you know, half of our workforce in the city lives in the county, and therefore jobs are very key to your residents outside of the city, then the success of the city and maintaining the investment there is absolutely vital, not just to those of us who live in the city, but to those who live around as well. Simon, you wanted to come in?
Yeah, please, Chairman. Just ask Chris, the viability of the Victoria Centre. You mentioned obviously Broad Marsh, and we hope that we get that redevelopment, but what about the Victoria Centre, which obviously is a major retail centre for you there?
Yeah, thank you, Councillor. Yeah, are ongoing between into their administrators and any potential partners in that. My latest understanding, but I have, this is largely through the public discussions rather than anything behind the scenes, that it is likely that the Victoria Centre will be sold to a consortium. It is one of their profitable centres, treated very differently from the Broad Marsh Centre. So you know, our anticipation is a deal will be struck there, and it will continue.
Okay, thank you, Chris.
Okay. Anybody else? Okay, thank you, Chris. Well,
David,
sorry,
Councillor Radulovic has got his hand up.
Yeah, Milan.
Chair, the obvious message, like with the Nottinghamshire Economic Recovery Bid, is the way in which this is perceived and received by the public. You know, obviously, bad news is good news when it comes to publicity, but I've been particularly keen to stress through the HS2 board, the Token Master Plan and others, the need to engage with local groups and local people to give them hope and aspirations for the future, to buy into the dream of the economic recovery that's coming. And my plea to me would be to you, Chris, is that this is not getting across to the public, both the county and to the city, that let's replace this despair of what's happening in the present to what we can build for the future. That's my first message to you, and it really concerns us all, particularly in the Nottinghamshire conurbation directly, that people need to see that there is a hope in the future, that we do have aspirations, we do have plans, and we do have opportunities that we intend to create coming out of this crisis into something much more environmentally friendly, much more in tune with our local ecology and local growth. But also that in the future that we have, in fact, an economic draft recovery plan in Nottinghamshire and Nottingham that is much more resilient to change. We've seen 2 crashes in 12 years in the area, all of which have produced horrendous problems for so-called ordinary people. What assurance can you give us, Chris, that in your plans that there will be some resilience built into the economic development strategy at Nottingham, because it affects us in the conurbation greatly, to give public the confidence that in 5 years' time we won't face another crash and another plea for £500 million to reinvest in the cities, that we actually have a workable plan with direction that gives hope and opportunity, especially to our younger people, and that we can build a better future.
Thanks, Milan. Chris, you want to come in back with that?
Yeah, shall I start, Chair, and then maybe you'll want to comment on the messages out to the public. But in terms of a resilient plan, the thing that gives me hope is what we managed to do after the financial crash with the plan in 2012. At that time, we faced unemployment levels in the 12, 13, 14%, and similar challenges for some of our major sectors, particularly in our service industries. And over the 5 years, 6 years following that plan, where we put into place a programme with investment through the city deal, with investment from the city councils, with support from partners, we built back many sectors of our economy. Unemployment reduced from, as I said, 12% to below 5%. Or the re-emergence of our kind of service sectors, the creative and digital industries in particular, and we saw regeneration investment coming back into the city centre, which provided jobs and places to go for many of our citizens. So that's the one thing I think that gives me some degree of hope. Clearly, what's been happening with COVID was incredibly difficult to predict, but I think that you build on a solid base, and it's that investment in the infrastructure that economies need, that businesses need to reinvest themselves. I think is the critical thing that we will be focusing on.
Thanks, Chris. I mean, just to add to that, there's no secret that there's been difficulties in the city that are beyond COVID, but I believe that there are opportunities that we have coming up, which I think will benefit all of us. I do believe that the opening of Nottingham Castle again in the spring will be a big draw to people to come and visit. It is going to be amazing. The prospects, the sort of sneak previews I've had of what's going to be there, and I think that will be a benefit for all of us. Clearly, the completion of the college building and the city centre, with students coming from both the city and the conurbation, is really important. And the opportunity in the Broadmarsh space, which we will, as Chris has said, be launching a bit more of a consultation of that, hopefully within the next few weeks, will. We wouldn't have chosen for this to have happened, but given that it has, there is an opportunity there for something which is perhaps different in the city centre rather than just another shopping centre, because retail, as we all know, has changed and probably changed a bit faster during COVID. So the opportunity is there. I think, Milan, your point about giving people hope is really, really important, because I think people, particularly being locked down a bit more, not going out and socialising in the way they have been, people worrying about their jobs, we need to give people hope. We need to give people prospect for the future, and we need to make sure that we get as much investment in Nottingham and Nottinghamshire as we possibly can to maintain those jobs, or to give people the chance to have a different job if they've lost theirs because of the difficult situation. So there's lots for us to do, I think, together, and very much on this committee. Milan.
I'm going to come back on just one point. The concern that's always expressed to me is the so-called post-economic recovery is a responsive and reactive rather than part of your resilience planning. And whether it's nobody can foresee circumstances, that's why resilience planning. How do you convince people that I talk to that a post-economic or post-COVID economic recovery across Nottinghamshire and Nottingham City will not simply be based on an unsustainable mountain of debt that future generations will have to pay for, and that we actually have a vibrant and robust economy that's able to respond and react, and is much more resilient to circumstances that happen to it. And if you going back to a point Chris made, and I accept what you say about the crash, Chris, but can I just remind you that it took 5 to 6 years to recover from that in any really tangible way. People haven't got 5 or 6 years. They are asking the questions now. What do we do about tomorrow? What is the future? And I don't share, I'm sorry, the optimism that many of you have or appear to have this morning, that somehow that things are going to be okay with the economic plans you've got. No, they are not. They are being built on an unsustainable mountain of debt. I'm sorry to sound negative, David, but these questions are being posed to me, and I thought it appropriate forum to raise with you this morning.
Well, I don't think anybody is underestimating the scale of the challenge. And, you know, the question of borrowing money to invest is something that we need to do very, very carefully. And people need to see that that is having fruit and having a benefit for all. And you're right, it's not going to be, you know, instantaneous. Of course it's not. We're not at the end of this yet. And so we don't know whether things are going to get worse before they get better. But we do know that we need to concentrate on making sure that people have the chance of gaining employment if they haven't got it or if they've lost their jobs. We do need to bring investment into the city. If I pretended that that's going to be easy, then I'm sorry, because it's certainly not the case. And we haven't got all the answers as yet. I don't know whether, Chris, you want to add anything to that?
I think you've hit the nail on the head there, David. It's that, you know, as local authorities, you know, I think it's incumbent on us to plan for a better future, but on the basis of recognising the challenges we have.
Okay, anybody else want to come in?
Yeah, I'd like to make a comment.
Andy.
I think Milan's almost answered his own question. I mean, we talk about, well, it took 5 or 6 years last time. Well, you know, that was the austerity, and obviously we have to look to investment in new skills and ideas and retraining of our young people for those new skills and ideas. So, you know, you have to invest to get the economy going, construction going, the new skills and the training going, and that in that way, you know, it's going to we're going to come out of it faster. There's no way we can just try and get that kind of level of debt back by not investing in the new skills.
Okay, I'm sure this will be a conversation that will continue. I'm just conscious we've only got 15 minutes left of the meeting and got 3 other verbal updates. So if people can do these in 3 or 4 minutes, that would be really good. So first of all, Kath Marriott to talk about the Regional Environmental Project.
Thank you, Councillor Mellon. I'm actually going to update on the N2 environmental work. So I know it said regional, but I'm focusing on N2. And this is following the Chief Exec work that was done with PW a year or so ago, when it was agreed that the climate change agenda was something that we could work on collectively. And if you recall, I updated at the last EPC in March, when we were in very different times, and you were all supportive of the work. So to give you a bit more of an update of what's happened since then, we operate on having a workshop every 6 weeks or so that is attended by all the local authorities in Nottinghamshire and Nottingham City, and also some voluntary sector partners who also assist us with this work, or non-profit organisation that assist us with this work. And our work has continued, but obviously the impact of COVID-19 is also reshaping our work as we look forward. So to just, I'll go through this quickly. Areas that we have been focusing on, solar PV installations on leisure centres. The work on that has continued, and we've got feasibility studies completed. Obviously, we're all considering the future of leisure provision. At the moment, it's a sector that is struggling, but is a sector that I think we need to support, because keeping our residents healthy also helps in the fight against the virus. Low carbon retrofitting of social housing is, that piece of work is continuing too across the county. And I know Chris referred to it in his presentation, really important piece of work, this to retrofit social housing, and we have identified various routes of funding to support that piece of work. We're working on a low carbon checklist for planners, and several events have been set up to support planners with training on that piece of work. And linked to that, we have developed a county-wide low carbon supplementary planning document framework, and a draft has been completed on this, which some of you may well be aware of. However, this work is subject to refinement following the government's response to the Future Home Standards consultation, which is out for consultation at the moment. And as you will be aware, government was minded to take away council's ability to set local standards. That's being consulted on at the moment, and we expect feedback in autumn. So I'll be able to update you on that in due course. We've also submitted a funding bid to the Local Government Association's Designing the Public Sector scheme. We're just waiting to hear if that's been successful. This is to develop a communication platform for the environmental work across the whole of Nottingham and N2, so that we can have consistent messages. So we're looking to develop a communications toolkit, a campaign plan template, and work on that shared vision across the whole of Nottinghamshire. We are also working alongside the wider Midlands region to identify possible sites in Nottinghamshire as being suitable for low carbon and energy transport hubs. And we've got 3 potential sites identified. The work there has not quite been finalised, not been published yet, but we're doing that alongside D2N2. The collaborative approach to fleet reviews is continuing, and in particular, Newark and Sherwood are leading the way here. So they're working with an organisation called Cenix, who are doing a fleet review for them, and once that has been completed, we'll be able to share that across the other local authorities. And in addition, through the Midlands Energy Hub, a project officer is investigating options around the electrification of local authority depots. So again, that fits into the low carbon agenda there, and changing the fuel source for our fleet. So other areas of work, just briefly to finish off on, which also link into what we've been discussing previously on economic recovery. We are working on connecting with some of our larger businesses, the bigger businesses, so that they can provide leadership to the business community on the low carbon agenda. So an example from Rushcliffe is we're working with British Geological Survey as one of our big businesses, who are assisting with promoting that wider knowledge across the big business network and leadership. We're also going to the other extreme, encouraging shop local, shop safe campaigns, part of the economic recovery linked to coronavirus, but those both support the local economy and reduce fuel usage, so linked to the comments earlier about the 20-minute village space. And those are funded via the Reopening High Street Safely Fund. And finally, like most organisations, we're all collectively reevaluating our approaches to home working to reduce organisational carbon footprints and travel costs. And in the longer term, there will be opportunity to use our buildings and our council estate more creatively in the future. And no doubt this is something that you'll be interested in, with its links to economic regeneration as well. So hopefully that was a short canter through. Circulated a briefing note as well, and we'll be very pleased to continue to update on this agenda item and collective and collaborative working as you would like in the future. Thank you.
Thanks, Kath. Let's go straight on to Brexit and Anthony.
Thank you very much, Chair. So I won't rehearse the pros and cons of Brexit here. People know them without me having to take you through them. What I will say is, of course, sometimes it's worth reminding ourselves of where we are in the process. The transition period, which followed the withdrawal agreement, ends on the 31st of December 2020. And in that transition period, we'll have seen played out in the media, the government currently is trying to negotiate with the EU the eventual terms of our departure. That's particularly important, of course, around trade, border checks, our financial settlements, and with specific issues such as the Irish border, fishing rights, all of the stuff that people can see and read in the media, yet to be resolved finally. There is a limit to what preparation people can make locally. The definitive date here, we're led to believe, is an EU summit on the 15th of October. In the transition period so far, the work that I've been asked to coordinate for local government, between local government in the region and NHCLG, has been less intense than it was in the lead up to the withdrawal agreement, because most people have been focused on COVID-19 and much less so on Brexit. In the last few weeks, however, that pace has quickened somewhat as the potential for one of two options emerges, which hopefully we'll understand better in a couple of weeks' time. And of course, one option is that we leave in new terms, and the other is that we don't. And local business, I know, is preparing for that. And there is now an increase of traffic between government and local government in terms of those preparations. But I have to say that it is still secondary at the moment to managing the coronavirus crisis. As the pace quickens, particularly up to and beyond October the 15th, I expect the range of requests, particularly for information being passed up to government from the region about business sentiment and business preparedness, to increase. And I also expect the range of requests from government about us disseminating information and collecting data to increase. But it hasn't been at the same intensity as it was in 2019, for I think understandable reasons, COVID first of all, and secondly because the final terms have yet to be agreed. But as and when the pace quickens and the implications are clearer, Chair, I'm very happy to.
Okay, thank you. Do you want to go straight on to the Development Corporation, given our time?
Yeah. So straightforwardly then, the genesis of this was the government asking the Midlands Engine to look at the potential for a single integrated vision and delivery vehicle to pull together some key sites up and down the line of HS2, many of which we've already spoken about today at the EPC, namely the area around the airport, the Ratcliffe-on-Soar power station, and the area around the Toten Hub station, including the Chetwynd Barracks. We've been working with government for about 18 months now to consider what that integrated vision and vehicle might look like. We're very well advanced in producing a business case. All of that work is overseen by an oversight board made up of partners from across the region, including some leaders here at the EPC this morning. The business case so far has proved that working in this integrated way brings more value to the economy than marketing and developing those sites individually. The government seems convinced of that. We will submit our final business case in the spring of next year. In the meantime, we've agreed an interim stage with government, because it's unlikely that government will move to a statutory development corporation quickly, particularly with the COVID-19 crisis, and because they're currently considering the outcomes of a consultation on the future of development corporations. The interim position that we've reached is that the 5 most affected councils, those councils with land within the sites that I've mentioned, will come together and, at least in principle, and of course none of this is yet signed and sealed in any of those 5 councils, and collaborate on an interim vehicle, company limited by guarantee, and collaborate on moving the project forward while the government reaches its final decision on the shape and type of development corporation it might want in the East Midlands. We're fairly confident the government does want this development corporation, because we're mentioned several times in recent policy documents, including the planning white paper. But whilst the government makes its final determination, we want to maintain momentum and do the work of master planning, land assembly, and an investment strategy which helps bring those sites forward and helps us work with the landowners, because the sites are in a diverse range of land ownership arrangements. There is a great deal of momentum and support for this across all partners, LEPs, universities and the councils that are involved. The next key meeting is an oversight board in about 10 days' time, at which the oversight board will be given a progress update on the establishment of the interim vehicle, which hopefully will lead to an eventual statutory vehicle, progress on the business case and the negotiations with government, progress on the submission that we've just made to the CSR for well over £200 million worth of infrastructure and revenue costs to support the development, and progress on the wider implications for the East Midlands, because many of the issues and themes in the Development Corporation, some of which we've touched upon today, such as connectivity, low carbon living, innovation and the use of technology, have as much benefit across the wider Midlands and East Midlands as they do within the Development Corporation. So the progress is good. We don't know yet how government will treat this programme in the longer term, but they're very encouraging in the short term. And we had an encouraging letter from the Secretary of State endorsing our decision to move to this interim phase a few weeks ago. And we hope to be in the interim phase, certainly at the beginning of the new year, with those 5 councils collaborating on this special purpose vehicle to move the project on in the way that I've described, Chair.
Anthony, I'm sorry we haven't had enough time to discuss these items, but I think we are returning to the regularly. So thank you, Kath and Anthony, for bringing them to us. Just time to set, we haven't got a date for the next meeting, but just to get a view from members about the regularity. Officers are proposing that we return to quarterly meetings. We haven't had one since March, but are people generally in favour of that? A few nods there. Anyone against? Okay, well, we'll leave the people organising to set the next date, which I imagine will be in early January now. Just a reminder for elected members that we've got a leaders meeting directly following this. It's on a different Zoom code. I suggest we have 2 or 3 minutes for a comfort break and then reconvene in a few minutes. Thanks very much, everyone, for your attendance. Thank you.